Hey guys, it's David from MDBootstrap.com, and in this video I'm gonna teach you how to create this landing page for a restaurant. So let's imagine you have your first customer and you're about to create a landing page for them. So taking into account that more than 50% traffic is currently generated by mobile devices, we always have to design our pages to keep that in mind and to make sure that they work and look perfectly on every device. As you can see here, this is exactly what's going on, what's happening here. So this page is fully responsive, so depending on which screen size your device uses, it will just adjust everything to looks perfectly and to work perfectly as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's jump into developing this website from scratch using MD Bootstrap in the newest version, MDB 5. So the first step to start is to go to mdbootstrap.com and to MDB 5 version, the newest one, and then download the newest version. So once you do that, you're gonna download the zip. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter if you want to get notification about new version released, which comes with new features. So download it, unzip the package, and then you will see this kind of file structure. And once you open this index.html, you're gonna see something like that. Now, what I did extra here, I prepared some pictures from unsplash.com, which I highly recommend you, and you're gonna find the links to authors of the pictures in the source code, which you're gonna find in the description down below. So let's open Visual Studio Code. So here it is. So this is our starting project, and let's start building this page. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna start with a navbar. So as you've seen, this is our navbar, and navbar is responsive. So on the mobile devices, it's gonna collapse. So you can expand it if you wish so. And on the bigger screen, it just looks like this one. So let's go and find navbar. So we're gonna go to docs. You can either use search form and type navbar, or you can just go to navigation and navbar. Okay, now we want to use this basic example as a starting point. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. I'm gonna remove this one. I'm gonna add some semantic placeholders. Like header, main, and footer, which will help us to understand where in which part of document we are currently working at, because when the files get bigger, it might be a little bit confusing. And now our navbar is here. Obviously, it's collapsed because our Windows is small. So if we have it like this, we can see entire navbar, and if we get it smaller, it will collapse. It will change to mobile version. So let's keep it like this for now. What we want to do, we want to get rid of things which we don't need over here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove this search form. So let's look for it. Here it is, search form. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. I also want to do small cleanup with the links here. We don't want this one disabled. We don't want this drop down in that project. So let's remove disabled. And let's remove the one which is drop down. And on the other hand, I have my home. Okay, so let's change this brand name to Steakhouse. And let's add some more links. We need 3 of them. So the one was gonna be about. Next one, menu, or actually book table, I guess. And the last one is a theme. Now we use this link to navigate to a certain section. So once we click on it, it will jump into a certain section of the page. So here we have this one. So now we want to do two more things with our navbar. So one thing is we want to pull the content into the center. So we want to use this margin here because we try to keep the entire content within this center part of our page using these margins because it's easier for user to read it, right? If this is not too wide, or actually if this is too wide, then it's difficult to read the content. So we don't want that. So we want to pull it into the center, and we're gonna do it using changing this class from container fluid to container. And if you don't know what's going on right now, what's happening, I strongly suggest to check our description because there you're gonna find tutorials on Bootstrap 5 grid, which we are using here, which is making our website responsible. Okay, once we have this one, we can get back to docs. And if you check our docs, you're gonna see that there are a lot of options which you can customize over here. So there are plenty different versions of Navbar using logos, including some icons, search forms, placement, and there are really numerous things you can adjust in our navbar. And one of these things is a color, so we can change colors. So we have also entire docs about colors itself, but long story make short, you can just change the entire look of navbar using different classes, and that's what we're gonna do right now. So what I want to do now, we have this navbar light and background light. I'm gonna change it to navbar dark, and we could change it to background dark, or we could even go, I'm gonna go even farther. I wanted this to be fully black. So now we have this navbar dark, which is changing a font color to white, whitish, and background black to make it totally black. Okay, since our navbar is ready, let's take care of this part, which is intro part. So let's get back to docs and let's go to headers section, which offers us a different version of intro or header. So here like full size screen or full image intro and many others. I'm gonna use this one, so background image. So I'm gonna copy this one. I don't want to copy entire code because it includes navbar, which we already have. So I'm gonna just copy this part, background image. So let's copy this one and let's paste it still within a header. So I'm gonna collapse navbar for a second. I'm gonna paste it over here and let's have a look now. Okay, so here it is. What I want to do, I want to get these styles from here because, you know, yeah, sometimes it's better to use inline styles, sometimes it's better to put it to classes. If you use just this heading over here, it's a good idea to have it here because it doesn't make sense to create the class for this one because you're not gonna reuse it. But in other cases like ours, when we want to add some media queries to it, then we're gonna it makes sense to put it into a separate file. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new file in CSS. I'm gonna call it styles CSS. Oops, styles.css. Yeah, I'm gonna place it over here, and I'm gonna add this to, let's say, intro. Okay, now we're gonna add this intro over here. So ID intro. Okay, and we want to link this file with styles. So here is MDB, so we want to add custom styles over here, link CSS styles CSS. Okay, so now we have ID intro, and here we have this one. Now it doesn't work because I messed up quotes here, right? So yeah, I didn't close this one. So now it's working fine. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to add some media queries. So we want this one to be bigger on large screens and to be smaller on the mobile devices. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say media, and then I'm gonna say minimum width to 576 pixels. And if you don't know what's going on right now, I'm using media queries. So if you want to get familiar with this, and you should, if you want to create pages, then I strongly encourage you to check description under this video, and where you're gonna find links to our CSS tutorials. Okay, so we have this different height set depending on the screen size. Now we want to change this file, obviously. So we want to add image intro. So here it is. Okay, and now this is how our intro will look like on the full screen. So as you can see, it's bigger, 600 pixels, but when we open this on a mobile device, it will get just 400 pixels and looks like that. Okay, now let's fill this part with some content. So we're gonna change the name to Steakhouse or Steak House, and we're gonna add this subheading, and we want to have two buttons over here. Okay, so we have two buttons. Now have a look at this ripple effect, which gives us this really nice wave effect on the button, which comes from Material Design. As always, you can read more about this ripple effect in the docs, because there are many options to use it. You can use it on images, you can change the color like you see here, and there are many different cool options to use it. So I strongly encourage you to get familiar with this one. Okay, now what we have to work on is spacing. So these buttons are too close to each other. So what we're gonna use margin. We're gonna add margins, and we're gonna add them using these classes, which you can see already here. This MB3 stands for margin bottom 3. So this is adding this bottom margin to this element. So now we want to add margin to these buttons. Let's say margin 2. What does it mean? This means that it's gonna add margin into all directions. So we have margin from top, bottom, right, and left, and it's gonna be set to 2. You can use it in many different ways. So we can say margin top, like empty. You can use margin bottom, margin left, margin right. You can use axes like margin x-axis, which is left and right, y for top and bottom. You can also use paddings in the same way. So it's very easy to use margins and paddings. And if you go to spacing docs, you're gonna find a lot more information on how it works and how you can use it. You can even specify different spacing for different screen size, like this extra large, medium, and so on. So this is very powerful tool, because it allows us to very quickly add the spacing to these elements, which we are usually doing anyway. So this makes our life easier. And just to show you why I'm using this margin in all direction, let's add third button. So now if we make our screen smaller, now we have this here. If I were to do MX, so only in the X direction, left, right, then we wouldn't have this margin in the vertical axis. So since we have this in all directions, they look really cool. Okay, now let's get rid of this extra button over here, and let's change this call to action to see menu, let's say, and that should be linked to menu and book a table. Okay, so let's just have a final look how it looks like. Yeah, I think it looks really cool. So let's move to the next section. Our next section will be placed inside our main part, and we're gonna use section element here. So I'm going to create section. Now I'm going to keep my section inside container fluid. So all our sections will be inside container. So this is Bootstrap grid system again. And what we want to do, what we want to achieve, we want to use this 2-column structure here to the left and to the right. So let's see how we can achieve that. So inside our container, I'm gonna add a row. I'm gonna add 2 columns. So I'm gonna use MD6 for now. We're gonna change it later. You're gonna see why. And inside the first column, where I'm going to add some heading like discover our menu. Okay, and in the next one, I'm gonna put some paragraph. So I have some text prepared like this one. Okay, so now we can see how these columns looks like, and that's because of the 6, they are taking the entire width. So what we could do, we could do now multiple multiple things to get them into the center. So obviously one thing which we can do is we can just align our text to the right. So I'm gonna say text right, and this is what's gonna happen, right? But it's still too big over here, right? I don't want this text to be so close to the right. So what we can do, we can, instead of container fluid, we could use container. It's getting better, yeah. But now we have this disproportion between this part and that part. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna switch it back to container fluid. I'm gonna change size of this columns. So one is gonna be MD4, and this one is also gonna be MD4. But what happens here is that they will be they are getting aligned to the left side. So we have to add a class to our row. The first class is justify content center, which will center our content over here, and next one will align item center, which will align them vertically. So now we have this one here, and now we have this looking like here. So this is what we wanted to achieve over there. We still need some spacing from the top, bottom, and next to each other. So let's do it now. So I'm gonna add padding right 5, which will pull off the text to the left, and let's add some class to our section, and let's add some margins, and within our CSS styles, let's add 2 classes. So first is we want our body to be black, yeah, and next we want our divider class, divider, to have background color something, let's say grayish, like this. Okay, now as you can see, since we have these margins over here, our background is actually pulling off, so we're gonna change it to padding, yeah. And since we have this black strips here, because our container is adding extra padding over here, we need to reset this to use padding x0. And the last remaining part is to switch this one to actually have padding on both top and the bottom. Okay, so this section is ready now. So we are ready to move to the next section. So our next section is section we're gonna call about. And in this section, we're gonna use grid again. So let's start with a heading saying our promise. Okay. Now we want everything in this section to be centered. And we want to add some margin from the top and the bottom. Now we also want to change the color of this text within this section to white. We can again do it easily using text white class, which will change text for all that. And now we are ready to add new rows and columns over here. So let's start with row, and we're gonna use two columns called MD4 times 2, and inside the first one we want to have some text like 100% meat and some paragraph. And on the other one, we want to add image with image 1 JPEG. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Now, as you can see, our image is too big. So what we want to do is add class called image fluid, which will make our image responsive, which means that once we start enlarging our screen, our image will also get bigger, and once we make it smaller, it will also make it smaller. So it's basically responsive now. Okay, now since we have these two columns here, MD4, which means this size of this column is 4 and that one is 4 as well, which means we have still 4 to go, and they're aligned to the left, so it doesn't look good. So what we can do about it, we can again use classes which you already know. So justify content center, which will put them in the center, and then we can also add align items center, which will align them vertically. Okay, now a few last changes. We want align this text to the right. So we will just say text right, which is another MDB5 utility. And this one is ready. So what we have to do, we have to create two more. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Let's just have a look. This is how it looks like on the large screen, and this is how it's gonna look on a mobile device. So as you can see, everything scales automatically, including the images. So let me now quickly create two remaining sections. Okay, so this section is ready. I'm gonna increase this margin over here to 5, make it bigger, and now it's ready. And obviously it is responsive, so once we shrink the screen, it will reorganize itself. Okay, so it's a high time to move to the next section. So the next section is this small divider, which we're gonna call book section. So section book. So what we're gonna use here is something you already know from this part. So we're gonna use this image background component. So let's reuse something which we already know, which we used over here. So we had this intro section, which was here. let's get rid of everything except for yeah, for this one we're gonna get rid of this intro. And now let's add some styles here. So for a book, we want to have this one again. Obviously, we want to change different. We want to use different image here. So book, yeah, and we want to make it smaller to 300 pixels. Let's say. Okay. We will also change background size to cover. Okay, and now let's get back to our index.html here. Now let's remove these masks here. And by the way, that reminds me that I didn't tell you about masks which we used over here. So when we were talking about the intro, we had this mask over here. So this mask is using an RGB color, so we can change the transparency of it. Now it's using black color. So now let's have a look what's gonna change if I'm gonna set this transparency to value like this. As you can see, everything becomes brighter, or we can make it even more darker. And we can also play with different colors over here to give our image or background a mask. So this is also important part. So let's revert this one and let's get back to the book part. So here it is, book a table. So here we could also obviously use a mask to make this one a little bit darker. So if you want learn more about masks, just go to the mask section and you can see that there are many different ways of using mask. You can even use a gradient one. So I think it's a really cool feature and you should check yourself. Okay, so once we have that one, let's move to the next section, which is our theme section. Okay, so here we're gonna use grid again. Let's start with h2, our theme. Let's add class text center to center this text, our theme, and text white. Now we want to add class margin y5 as always to have some spacing, and now we are ready to start using grid. So we want row and we want call MD 4 times 3. So we want three rows like this one, and we want to use some cards over here. So if you go to cards, you're gonna see plenty different cards over here available for you. And I'm gonna use, let's say, this one, the vertical one. So I'm gonna copy this one. I'm gonna paste it over here. Let's go full screen now. Yeah, so we have 3 of them right now here. Okay, we don't want entire text white because it's making our font here white as well. So we're gonna just leave it to the heading, and here we're gonna leave what's left. Okay, now we want what we want. These cards are too big. I'm gonna change it to call MD3. Yeah, and we want to center this one. So what we're gonna do is, again, we're gonna use justify content center. So it will get to center, and now I'm just gonna fill this with data, so with the name and the picture. So let me quickly do that. I updated all the cards, so now this is how it looks now. And obviously, if we check this on a mobile device, then they will nicely change order. Oops, I didn't change the picture of the last one. Let me fix it quickly. Okay, so this section is ready. So the last one is footer, and this is what we're gonna take care of right now. So for a footer, let's go and see what we can use out of the box. So as you can see, you have different varieties of footer available over here. So let's use one of existing one. So I'm gonna use this one. And then again, you can already see that you can easily adjust footer colors using different classes. So let's do that now. Okay, so here it is, but obviously we want to make it darker. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna change this classes here to background black and text white. Yep. And now let's add some content. So we're gonna add some locations here. We're gonna get rid of this listing, and what we're gonna do here is we're gonna add some paragraph here. So let me add this address over here. So this is what we have in the first column. We're also gonna add some margin to it to push it to the bottom. Then we're gonna use this column, we're gonna get rid of this one, and we're gonna use the last one. So let me quickly do this one. So let's get rid of this content from a second column. Yeah. Now let's leave this one empty. And let's move to the last one, which is gonna be interesting one, because we're gonna have this one here as a working hours. We're gonna remove this one. And what we're gonna do here, we're also gonna use a grid inside a grid. So we're gonna add a row, and we're gonna use call 6 times 2. And we're gonna add this working days in the first column and working hours in the second one, which will give us this nice effect over here, which looks very, very good. Here, let's add some margins, margin bottom 5. And here it is. Let's change this one to text white. And voila, our page is ready now. So the last thing we have to do is just to update these links in the Navbar. So let's do it quickly now. Our Navbar is collapsed, so now I'm just gonna do here about book and team, and now we can easily move to any section we want. Okay, so now since our page is ready, it's a high time to publish it to web. So what you have to do is just open your terminal or command line and just type MDB publish. If you are MDB user, you will be able to publish it within just a few seconds. So what you need to do, just give an name to your project, or you can leave this default, like I had it working, so I just changed it to MDB5 landing, and you can accept any other values here, and it will publish your page within a second. And as soon is gonna be published, you're gonna get a link to your page, which you can just copy, paste, and you're ready. So that's easy. If you are not MDB user and you are not familiar with CLI, don't worry, just check description down below where you're gonna find link to the CLI tutorial, or you can just go to mdbootstrap.com and check MDB CLI. Now, I strongly encourage you to create your own website with on your pictures and designs and publish it to MDB CLI. And once you do that, I encourage you to join our group on Facebook where you can show off your projects. So you're gonna find link to this group also in the description down below. So once you create something, do not hesitate. Show this to our developers and the other users on a group.